Imagine I contemplated shutting the TV off in the fourth quarter. That would have been a huge miss. Tom Brady's epic Super Bowl comeback last weekend left most people with their jaws on the floor, including mine, only picking them up to say he's officially the greatest quarterback of all time. Many even saying he's now the best player ever. One of those people is not. Jets wide receiver Brandon Marshall, who said the following to NJ Advance Media. Quote, he's not the best player ever. We get caught up in that whole discussion that when a quarterback is playing really well, he's probably the best in the business, and we think he's the best player, and that's not true. When I think about a player, I think about a guy that I can put at corner, safety, defensive end, a guy that I can put back on punt return, chase down kicks. I would put J.J. Watt in that discussion. I would put Reggie White in that discussion. I would put Dion in that discussion. I would put Jerry Rice in that discussion. Ryan Clark is back with us. We will get to you in a moment. Max Kellerman, is Marshall being bitter when talking about TB12, your fave?
I think he is. I mean, look, Brandon Marshall's a rational guy, except when he's defending his own quarterback, but we know he has to do that. But he's a rational thinker, and this is irrational. Why would you value versatility over efficacy? If we assume that the quarterback is the most important position on the field, which I think is, we all agree with, and we say that Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, which many of us have already come to that conclusion based on his body of work before this season and this Super Bowl, but afterward, there are very few who don't consider him that at this point. At least the majority consider him that. Then it's not a great leap, as Brandon Marshall points out, to say he's the greatest player of all time. Now, I know what Brandon Marshall means, because as I've said, I think Aaron Rodgers is better. He hasn't had as long a career, hasn't been with as great a coach on as good a team, so he doesn't have the resume. So I know what he means. The eyeball test says, oh, this guy might be better, or that guy might be better. But when you talk about the greatest ever, the body of work, the fact that another guy can return kicks, why does that make him more valuable than the best guy or the greatest guy at the most valuable position? And then what other than bitterness, because he's played in the same division with him recently and lost, would explain why Brandon Marshall comes to this irrational conclusion?
For the purposes of our listeners, when Max Kellerman said efficacy, that's another word for effectiveness. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you.
For those that didn't know the definition of it, it's effectiveness, essentially. But here's the deal. Brandon Marshall, is he bitter? All right, fine. But here's my point. Brandon Marshall, I keep telling y'all this. He's not allowed to talk about quarterback.
Thank you,
Brandon
Stephen
Marshall has no credibility
you.
to talk about quarterback. I told Brandon Marshall this to his face. Somewhere, Ryan, he's laughing right now because I get on him about this all the time. He supported Jay Cutler. He put on pom-poms and damn near was dancing on the football field like Martellus Bennett was in the Super Bowl, like T.O. did one time, like Chad Ochocinco did when he put on a Hall of Fame jacket or whatever the case. That's how Brandon Marshall rides for his quarterback. He supported that dude who, wait, I'm sorry, did I finish? I'm not finished yet, Ryan Clark. I'm not going to let y'all get away with this. This damn Jay Cutler, who last seen has a photos on a boat with his wife looking like he's on the verge of becoming Jabba the Hutt, for crying out loud. That Jay Cutler, who seems so damn happy in the offseason. I've never seen a dude more happier for the offseason in the NFL than Jay Cutler with his fat, lazy style. Don't get me started with him. In the end, Brandon Marshall, it's Jay Cutler in Denver. It's Jay Cutler in Chicago. It's Chad Henne in between in Miami. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick. I even saw Brandon Marshall come on the air and talk about how Geno Smith can be a great quarterback. Brandon Marshall has no credibility when it comes to the quarterback. He's a fantastic guy, a fantastic football player, but he should not be allowed to discuss quarterbacks.
Ryan,
he has no credibility with that.
Brandon Marshall said Jay Cutler was underrated and Fitzpatrick is underrated and Brady's overrated.
Hey, guys, listen, I don't think it's bitterness. Maybe you can say he doesn't have the opportunity to talk about quarterbacks because of the guys he's kind of stood up for. And I would say he's almost like, if you're my quarterback, I ride for you. I'm not really mad with that.
Almost.
Looking at Tom Brady, I do believe he's the greatest of all time. And I was telling Molly during the break, I get more tweets from Patriots fans because I said I would take Aaron Rodgers, and that hasn't.
And that's fine. You just have less championships, but that'd be good. You have a more athletic
but that's
quarterback.
okay.
Yeah,
I only
right.
have one anyway, Molly.
You have a lot less.
I only have one
okay.
anyway, so I'm not really tripping.
Yeah.
But to me, Tom Brady's body of work, Tom Brady's resume, the way in which he's done it, makes him the greatest quarterback of all time because he's the most accomplished quarterback of all time. He's played for the best team in this millennium. But when you talk about the greatest player, regardless of position, I think that Brandon Marshall has a point. Who is to say that Jerry Rice isn't the greatest player of all time? Who is to say that Reggie White isn't the greatest of all time? And I understand what Max is saying. We put so much on the quarterback. The quarterback is responsible for so many wins. And when we rank quarterbacks, it's based on the Super Bowls and the playoff wins. And I get all that. And through that, Tom Brady becomes, to me, the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. But is he that much greater of a quarterback than Jerry Rice was of a wide receiver when you compare him to the other people and his peers who have played the position? I think there is an argument for that. And so because
for his position, but his position is harder to play or more people would be great at it. In other words, quarterback being the most important position, if you're the greatest quarterback, even if it's by a smaller margin than the wideout is at wideout, it's more valuable. Furthermore, Ryan, if you want to mention
we're not asking who's the most valuable, though, Max. We're asking who's the greatest player of all time.
But if you want to mention guys other than Tom Brady at other positions, what about guys who can impose themselves on the game like LT, like Lawrence Taylor or Jim Brown? I don't even think Brandon Marshall brought up the best candidates.
Well, listen, I'm not saying that Brandon Marshall brought up the right people. What I'm saying is it doesn't make him bitter because he's making the argument that that Tom Brady might not be the greatest player of all time. Like, everybody doesn't have to fall into place with this.
That's fair.
My point is this, though. Because we don't agree that Tom Brady's the greatest ever, doesn't make people bitter. It just make you have a different opinion.
Look. All right, Gandhi, we get the point. You know, it doesn't make Brandon Marshall bitter. I got it. Doesn't make him bitter. I got it, Ryan. I got it. But here's my point. Ryan. I got to ask you this question, though.
Stephen A.
I'm just saying. All right, he's not bitter, but this is the point that you've neglected to bring up.
What's that?
What is Brandon Marshall known for? Supporting his quarterbacks. So who does he speak against? The opposing quarterback. You got to remember,
this
Ryan.
Man does TV.
I've been in the first
this
2
man
years.
Gets nominated for Emmys.
Hold on, wait a minute.
He's still competing against him, Ryan.
He is not biased.
Hold it, y'all. I got a point. He has been in the NFC East 2010, 2011, and then he came back in the last 2 seasons. So 4 years. He has suffered through the misery of Tom Brady. Another, what is it, 1, 2, 3?
I'm not saying he's not the greatest of all time, but you don't have to be bitter to have a different opinion.
Okay, all I know is Brandon Marshall lied to us. He was with us at the Super Bowl. He held up a sign. He said he was done talking about quarterbacks. And then we have this nonsense. Ryan, it's been real. Good to see you. You and your vans are dismissed.
We can't let Stephen A. dictate who can talk about quarterbacks. I'm not having it.
We can.
Hey, Gandhi, it's good seeing you, Gandhi. It's good seeing you. It's good seeing you.
Oh, bye, Ryan. Come